Well, up to now, Martha Coakley has been the presumed frontrunner in the race for governor, but her second-place finish at the Democratic State Convention earlier this month raised questions about her support from party diehards. And yesterday's rebuke from the SJC raises new questions about her prospects. Yesterday's ruling could pose trouble for Martha Coakley, who argued as Attorney General that the casino repeal shouldn't be on the ballot. But afterward, the AG tried to accentuate the positive.
I am pleased that the Supreme Judicial Court has ruled on this issue of great interest to voters in Massachusetts.
But Charlie Baker, the likely Republican nominee, says Coakley's position suggested bad legal judgment or worse.
Either she got really bad legal advice or there's something else going on here.
Well, the SJC ruling is just one of several political stories making headlines this week. Here to hash them out are Jeff Simone, the executive director of the Massachusetts Federation of Young Republicans, and Mara Dolan of the Mass Democratic State Committee, and Adam Riley of WGBH News. Now, this whole thing has sort of been turned on Martha Coakley. People saying, oh, this is embarrassing. But, you know, I look at the SJC and think, yeah, you know, it's a legal ruling. She made one legal ruling. I don't think she had an agenda when she made her original ruling. I really don't. I mean, you know, and to me, you know, I'm not even sure they got it right, if you want to know the truth, but it's a legal ruling.
Well, a unanimous decision is, I mean, that's rather forceful, and a unanimous decision that calls her legal rationale, pardon me, her legal thinking into question is also, I think it's a little bit of an embarrassment. But that being said, I agree with you that it's a reach to suggest, as I've heard Charlie Baker do, he did it on our air today with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, suggesting that either she got it wrong, legally speaking, or there's something else nefarious going on. As he tried to explain that, I think the gist was something like, you know, on Beacon Hill, this is what the insiders have wanted, and she's enthralled to the insiders. That wasn't exactly how he put it, but that seemed to be the gist, and I think that's a bit of a reach.
Well, I'd say that the long-term political ramifications are a little bit, have more legs than this specific story. I mean, now that casinos are on the ballot in November, you're going to get a different demographic of voter coming out, and that's going to definitely hurt the Democratic nominee, whether it's Martha Coakley or not. It's going to help Charlie Baker and Republican statewide candidates.
I don't think she was disingenuous when she said she was pleased with the decision. This would have been much tougher for her if this hadn't been on the ballot. She would have been the scapegoat for all of the folks who want to keep casinos out of Massachusetts. And this is an issue where Steve Grossman has been talking a lot about how she's a prosecutor. She needs to be more of a defense attorney and step up and defend herself against these charges.
This helps Don Berwick, too.
Yeah, Don Berwick. Yeah.
Now,
who's been the clearest, I should say, anti-casino voice out there. He's a Democrat, but he's been quite consistent and clear about it.
Yeah, since the convention, Martha Coakley has had to defend this position of leader in the polls, but while coming in second place, it adds some credibility to both Grossman and Berwick's campaign, and you know, much like the U.S. soccer team, you know how tough it is to protect the lead. So
Grossman never really took a position about whether this should be on the ballot.
He's pro-casino. So,
yeah.
And Baker, it's worth mentioning, is not really anti-casino either. He thinks there should be one, which is what he said when he ran against Deval Patrick last time. But he also said today that he would vote against repeal. So it's not like he's going to be a natural option for people who, you know, really hate the idea of casinos coming to Mass. I'm actually curious, what's the demo you think is going to come out that will benefit Baker more than?
Yeah, I'd say people who maybe have a chip on their shoulder about government that might otherwise not in a midterm year, non-presidential election year. So there's some, for instance, for Charlie's position, he's in a good position because there's room for nuance in this. He can still say, let's start with one, let's go back, maybe revisit it, send it back to the legislature. There's a lot of room to.
Who thinks this is going to be repealed? Do you think it's actually going to be repealed?
I think it's going to be repealed, but there's a fascinating parallel with both parties in that the likely nominee for both parties supports the casinos. They each have a nominee. Mark Fisher was on the running for and on the Republican side, on the Democrat side, Don Berwick. In both instances, those people were supported by their conventions and not the one who's ahead in the polls.
Of course, we've seen this before. You remember many times what was his name, Pierce, who got the nomination, and then Bill Weld won the election. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily matter who.
And also, Fisher wasn't supported by his convention in the way that Steve Grossman was. I mean, Steve Grossman won the convention. Fisher managed to get on the ballot.
Also, we don't know what kind of money is going to come into play for this ballot question from both sides.
Yeah, a lot.
A lot.
All right, well, Martha Coakley is also in the news after reaching a deal that allows Partners Healthcare, the state's biggest healthcare network, to acquire South Shore Hospital. Coakley says by striking a deal, the state is reducing the negotiating power of Partners, limiting its ability to acquire physicians and controlling costs across its entire network. But critics say the deal doesn't go nearly far enough. So, I mean, the critics are saying that this is actually creating a monopoly. And so while the acquisition is going forward, she's trying to put a positive spin on this by saying, oh, well, you know, we're not going to let them acquire positions and that kind of thing. But they are acquiring the hospital.
They're getting a hospital. They're going to cap cost increases across the Partners network to inflation or below, right? They're going to cap price increases, I believe, at South Shore Hospital, also to inflation or below. The deal's going to let providers negotiate with Partners as separate entities, not just one Partners network, but different parts in Partners. But here's the problem. As I just tried to run through the list I'd memorized of what's maybe good about the deal, I saw all your eyes glazing over. My own eyes started to glaze over. And that's why I'm not sure how hot button an issue this is going to be in the race, because people know healthcare is important, but it's so
deadly.
Well, what it does is it opens up an opportunity for Don Berwick and the progressive elements of the Democratic Party to really go after her on this issue, the fact that she made a deal. Mm-hmm. And when you make a deal, instead of maybe stick to your guns, looks like another defeat for her, and it could be trouble with the base.
Of course, his big message is single-payer health care, and some people say, well, that's monopolistic in itself.
There is going to be debate on that because Martha Coakley has now said, well, the people who say that it's going to save money aren't right. But even if you simplify the Partners deal, it does expand the number of hospitals that they have. This is an organization that Martha Coakley herself referred to as a political Goliath. It does cap the rate at which they can raise, but they themselves said that they would save $18 million. Well, if they're saving $18 million, why do they need to raise their prices up to the rate of inflation?
The deal itself is
because everything is for profit. I don't care. There's non-profit, not-for-profit. Everything is for profit in the medical industry.
And that's the argument for single payer.
Another reason I think people might not be going crazy about this, and I should disclose here, my wife actually is a Partners employee. I'm not trying to carry water for Partners here. Having said that, people don't like their healthcare costs going up and up. You know, we all know firsthand that insurance costs are rising. It's kind of brutal sometimes. But that being said, people tend to want to go to Partners facilities. If you get, a serious illness, you're thinking probably right off the bat of going to a lot of different Partners hospitals like MGH. So while people might not like what Partners market dominance is doing structurally, they don't necessarily dislike Partners itself.
I think my eyes started to glaze over when you were going into that.
Right.
But I think the political ramifications for Martha Coakley is, it's just another ding against her, that it's a loss. It opens her up for attacks from Don Berwick especially, and it's going to erode her lead.
Are you cynical at all about the timing of this? I mean, the SJC ruling about casinos comes out, and then, like, within an hour and a half, Martha Coakley's office issues this statement about the Partners deal, and it's like, well, no one will pay attention to that because everybody's going to be focused on it.
I'm not that cynical about it. I think it's just a bad week for Martha Coakley.
I mean, again, she has to stop being a prosecutor. She needs to be a defense attorney on these issues.
It's very tough.
Yeah.
It's very tough. All right. Well, 2 years ago, Democratic Congressman John Tierney narrowly fended off a challenge from Republican Richard Tassay, despite extensive coverage of his wife Patrice Tierney's legal problems. Now Tassay is taking on Tierney again, and a new poll out of Emerson College shows him leading Tierney among likely voters. So we saw this happen the last time. Do you think that this is a more serious challenge than it was the last time?
Absolutely. It doesn't look like there's a third-party candidate involved, which did siphon away some potential votes for Richard in that race. And these polls tend to stay static going into the summer. So as the summer months drone on, people kind of check out. And it may stay just about the same until Labor Day. Again, Richard Tassay has an incredible fundraising machine. He's ahead, I believe, of John Tierney in the fundraising
He's a
department.
Republican, though.
Yes, it's never easy. It's never a slam dunk for Republicans in Massachusetts. But he's in as good a position as he can be.
He's not just a Republican. He is a Republican who claims to be a moderate, and yet he has formed a political action committee with Frank Junta up in New Hampshire. He's a Tea Partier. So for Richard to come forward and say, I'm a moderate, isn't going to fly.
What do you mean, Junta is Tea Party?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
That's what I meant.
clarify that.
Well, yeah, but I mean, why is he fundraising with someone like that? If he's really a moderate, this is a guy who boycotted the Republican State Convention because of the positions in their platform on choice, on marriage equality. But voters know that if he goes to Congress, he's going to vote with the Republican leadership because he's going to have to.
Just 2 quick points I would make. Tassé was getting a lot more help from the media last time around.
Yes.
Patrice Tierney's legal woes were making headlines day after day after day. He's not going to have that this time to help him, as far as we know. And in addition, Tassé, I think, is probably very appealing on many issues to people. Likeable guy. He can be a bit laconic, however. And I want to remind you all of this campaign ad that he ran down the home stretch last year. I think we have video of it. I really hope we have video of it.
Yeah, we do. Here we go.
Good.
That was nice.
So speaking of eyes glazing over, like the ad, sometimes like the man to his detriment. Again, very likable guy, attractive candidate in many ways, but I think he has a
Yeah, well, it's just
tough
interesting to me
road ahead.
that the polls are showing him that close when he's not getting the media attention. We're not hammering John Tierney over his
Emerson
offshore.
College. Did you know they did polls?
And it's a midterm year. Don't forget it's a midterm year. Last year was a presidential election year.
We'll stay on this.
Last cycle, excuse me.
Jeff Simone and Mara Dolan. And I'm Riley. Thanks so much.